Hi folks, I'm Nancy from Save Our Streams Hamilton. I'm also one of the organizers of the Stop Sprawl campaign, and I, along with many others, was delighted when Hamilton City Council voted last November to not expand our urban boundary. 3,300 acres of prime foodland, along with its wetlands, headwaters, wildlife habitat, hedgerows, and forest communities in the potential expansion areas, were saved from being paved for sprawling residential suburbs. It was a great outcome, but what you might not know is that what was saved is only a part of Hamilton's farmland, because over 1,300 acres had already been swept into the urban fold in 2015. But it wasn't for residential development, it was for industrial sprawl, and it's shown here in purple. Just for a reference, the red square outlines the property H is where the Garner Marsh is located. The prime foodland here was rezoned from agricultural to what's called employment land in 2015. That means that no houses will be built, but something worse, warehouses, and lots of them. In the early 2000s, this area was labeled the Aerotropolis, and there was a lot of opposition to it. Folks cited loss of farmland and the massive cost of servicing over 1,000 acres of greenfields as reasons to pause. But nevertheless, despite a massive pushback and an appeal to the OMB, the plan went ahead and the land was rezoned. Given its unpopularity, it was then rebranded as the Airport Employment Growth District, or AEGD. Since then, the properties in the airport lands have changed hands many times as speculators bought, sold, and flipped. Fortunes were made, as always happens when urban boundaries expand. And it's taken many years for development to begin, but it has, starting with the Amazon warehouse near the airport. And now the floodgates are open and the applications to throw up more warehousing are flying in thick and fast. All of this is fueled by e-commerce. We've gone from walkable communities with local shops, to malls, to big box stores, and now to online purchasing with goods delivered tomorrow with the click of a button today. Perhaps a move back towards a more sustainable model of shops in walkable neighborhoods would be the answer. But for now, e-commerce rules, and we are tracking 5 such development applications at the moment in the airport lands. The warehouse complex plan for the Garner Marsh is just one of them. So in response to this imminent threat to the headwaters, not only of Hamilton, but of 4 conservation authorities whose headwaters are located here, we formed a grassroots group, which we've called Save Our Streams Hamilton. Our aim is to shine a light on the hundreds of acres of irreplaceable natural heritage, from headwaters to foodland to habitat on the Hamilton Mountain, that are now in the crosshairs of development. As I mentioned before, this land was rezoned as employment land in 2015, and 4 years later, in March of 2019, Hamilton declared a climate emergency and then set about doing very little about it. Now we're up against a wall. We've learned so much since then about the climate emergency, about the real need for local food systems, about biodiversity loss, and about the risks of flooding associated with paving over nature. Hamilton has goals, bylaws, and secondary plans in place to help us avoid worsening the climate change picture and to protect nature. But are those goals and visions being followed or ignored? 5 development applications amounts to thousands of pages of material to look over. So these are just a tiny fraction of the species, habitats, and natural features that are found in the AEGD that I pulled from the documents. Many of them are species of special concern, are threatened, or endangered. And what is often listed on development applications as, quote, vacant land is anything but. These farmlands, forests, and wetlands are alive and teeming with biodiversity. So not only do they produce food for us, they're also home to hundreds and hundreds of species. So whether you're a bird lover, a tree hugger, or a wetland wanderer, it's all here and it all needs saving. Secondary plans are a sort of roadmap for how an area within the city is to be developed. The AEGD has its own secondary plan, and its purpose is to act as a guide to the sort of development that we expect to see here. These are words and phrases I pulled from the secondary plan for the AEGD. The area is envisioned to be an eco-park that blends in with nature, respects the natural features, and affords it protection. It commits to making efficient use of the land by building industrial buildings more densely, thus protecting mature trees, source water, streams, and trails. It speaks of reducing emissions, adding green roofs and solar panels, minimizing surface parking, and building active transportation networks. But let's not kid ourselves. This is nothing more than a kindergarten wish list for Santa Claus, because that's not how warehousing is built. Because when this biodiversity hotspot with a wetland, hedgerows, small forests, and a headwater tributary of the Ancaster Creek, which you can see the outline of gently curving across the farm field, turns into this, you can be sure that every single inch of green space that is owned by the corporation who bought it will be obliterated and paved. And any part on this picture that you see that's white is what they don't own. On this property alone, 1,087 trees shown in red, not even including the woodland to the bottom of the slide, will meet the chainsaw to clear the way for industrial sprawl, and that includes endangered butternuts. And of the 5 development applications we're tracking, of the literally dozens and dozens that could be coming, that amounts to 5,000 trees being removed during a climate emergency, and when Hamilton is putting the finishing touches on its urban forestry preservation plan. So that flies in the face of pretty much everything. This type of development application is what's planned for the AEGD, but it's not what was envisioned. There's no respect for nature, nothing eco about this, no preservation of wetlands, especially if we are now at the OLT trying to save a locally significant one from being paved. So instead of the rosy wish list of the AEGD secondary plan, what we have is a developing hellscape of massive complexes, wetlands that turn into stormwater management ponds, thousands of truck and car parking spaces, and loading spaces and loading bays, their impervious surfaces, and tributaries realigned to flow in straight lines between the towering walls of Building 1 and Building 2. And you can see it here. This is a tributary of the 20-mile creek watershed. They've realigned it to go between these 2 buildings, but isn't it nice that they've made it meander for more natural experience? And this is a provincially significant wetland, which is protected and will be afforded the minimum buffer allowed by law, but still it will be surrounded on 3 sides by warehouse complexes. So instead of the utopian vision of an eco-park, what we're getting is the status quo: destruction, contamination, pollution, deforestation. It's an abomination. Oh, and who is paying for all these services that need to be put in place to support this development? Just as we discovered during the Stop Sprawl movement, sprawl costs Hamilton taxpayers. This is a cost estimate from 2010. The proponents who were pushing to have the airport employment growth district stopped poured over thousands of paper documents and added it all up to $500 million. So do you think that perhaps 12 years later, that the price tag has probably gone up? If it was $500 million in 2010 to service this land, I'd be very curious to know what it costs now. And it's probably all indicated in the capital budget. If anybody in the audience is a forensic accountant and wants to contact us, we'd be happy to go through it and find out how much this will cost us in today's dollars. So when Hamilton declared a climate emergency, goals to address it were created. One was ensure a climate change lens is applied to all planning initiatives to encourage the use of best climate change mitigation and adaptation practices. Another one was protect and restore the natural environment by increasing our carbon sinks and local food production through the preservation and enhancement of the natural environment, including local farmland. And finally, improve Hamilton's climate resiliency by decreasing our vulnerability to extreme weather and minimizing for future damages. Well, there's nothing that's going to cause damage more than an entirely impervious Hamilton Mountain. That means flooding downstream, no questions asked. So the question is, in choosing to demolish our headwaters and pave over our natural lands by putting industry here in this location, is Hamilton following its own rules and visions and recommendations? Is there somewhere more appropriate for this sort of land use? We believe there is, and it's the Portlands. The Bayfront Industrial Area was created for this type of industry. In the past, this area was a significant employment area, supporting tens of thousands of jobs. But that number has plummeted, and much of the space is now deserted and awaiting revival. Both Nikola Tesla Boulevard and Burlington Street, with their elevated overpasses, were designed to accommodate the constant flow of heavy truck traffic. The area is already serviced, and there's a significant multimodal transportation hub right here with direct access to the marine, with the port being here, to rail, and to connections to 3 different highways. Additionally, it's a mere 20 minutes to the Hamilton Airport. So before a single other inch of our headwaters are destroyed, we are demanding that warehouses be put where they belong. We're demanding wetlands, not warehouses, on the AEGD land. Thank you so much for listening and for your passion for saving our natural heritage in Hamilton. Please do join us on Thursday, April 7th, for our first ever online rally to save the Gardner Marsh. This will be a lighthearted hour of speakers and entertainers, and we're going to round off with a fundraiser where every donation made will be eligible for a tax receipt, thanks to our partnership with the Small Change Fund. We hope to raise a lot of money that night to offset the costs of our legal battle to save the Gardner Marsh at the Ontario Land Tribunal. And this is a precedent-setting case because it's the first time a developer has taken the Hamilton Conservation Authority and appealed their decision and their right to deny their permit application to demolish a marsh. So we hope that denying that will set a precedent in our favor. So please visit our website for more details and join our newsletter while you're there so that we can email you the registration link and keep you up to date. Thank you so much for your time tonight.